This happened about a year ago. I was 32 and living alone in a small apartment at the top of an old 4-story building. I always thought I wanted independence, but sometimes I felt more isolated than I expected. The walls were thin. I could hear my neighbors if they got too loud. When storms rolled in, the flickering lights and the sound of the rain made me feel even lonelier. One stormy evening, I was curled up on the couch, trying to watch TV. The thunder was loud. It rattled the windows. Suddenly, I heard a soft tapping on my window. At first, I thought it was the wind stirring branches, so I brushed it off. But as the rain poured down, the tapping grew louder. It felt like something was trying to get my attention. A chill crept down my spine. I shouldn't have done it, but I stood up and peeked through the curtain. Nothing, just rain and darkness. A few days later, another storm arrived. It was fierce and relentless. I was trying to focus on my work, but I kept getting distracted by the pounding rain. Out of nowhere, my old radio turned on by itself. It blasted static, breaking the silence. I jumped, heart racing, staring at it like it was alive. I didn't even remember leaving it plugged in. I quickly fumbled to turn it off. I told myself it was just faulty wiring, or maybe the storm, but deep down, I wasn't sure. Then came the third event during a stormy night. I was on the couch again, wrapped up in a blanket, trying to ignore the storm. The rain tapped against the windows. It almost felt comforting. But then, I felt something brush against my skin. It was soft and quick, like tiny hands, as if a child sneaked up behind me. I gasped and whipped my head around. There was nothing there. Just shadows shifting in the dim light and the heavy storm outside. My breath quickened. I couldn't believe it. I wasn't imagining it. After that, I started questioning everything. Was I losing my mind? Had the isolation happened to me? I didn't want to be alone with those storms anymore. The radio incident and the feeling of those tiny hands gnawed at my mind. The unease kept building each time the thunder rolled. Then I knew the next storm would be different. Something was waiting for me. Late one night, as the skies rumbled, I heard that tapping again, quick and soft, just like before. I hesitated, frozen in place. I stared at my door, heart pounding. The sound of rain faded into the background. I was torn between fear and curiosity. I couldn't ignore it anymore. As I stood there, I felt a cold breeze sweep across the room, sending shivers down my spine. I took a deep breath, trembling, and slowly reached for the doorknob. What was on the other side? I didn't know, but I was terrified of finding out. As I turned the doorknob, the sound of the storm outside roared back, drowning out my thoughts. The icy metal felt foreign against my palm. I paused, trying to gather my courage. What if it was just the wind? Or, worse, what if it was something else? Slowly, I pulled the door open, the hinges creaking loudly in the quiet. The darkness seemed to swallow me whole. I peered into the dim hallway. Nothing looked out of place, just the flickering light bulbs casting eerie shadows. I stepped out cautiously, heart racing. The storm raged outside, sheets of rain slamming against the building's exterior. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see a figure lurking in my apartment. But there was only the couch, my blanket draped over it. I took a deep breath and stepped forward, drawn to the source of the tapping. My apartment hallway felt like a tunnel leading to something unknown. I could hear the tapping again, coming from the end of the hall. It was getting louder. I hesitated. Should I continue? What would I find? I pushed those questions aside and walked on. As I neared the stairwell, I noticed something unusual on the ground. It was a small, damp toy. A toy soldier, face down in a puddle of water. I picked it up. It looked old, and a weird sense of familiarity washed over me. Hadn't I seen this toy before? I scanned the hallway again. It was just me and the sound of the storm. When I turned the toy over, a small piece of paper fell out from beneath it. I scrambled to pick it up. My hands were wet from the rain now, dripping from my clothes. The note was scribbled, barely legible against the water-stained edges. My heart raced as I read the words. Help me. I glanced around, my fear escalating. Who needed help? I didn't hear anybody, just the storm and the stairs leading down into darkness. I thought of the tapping, the feeling of small hands on my skin. My mind raced, trying to connect the dots. I started backtracking, heading toward my apartment, feeling the weight of the toy in my pocket. As I entered my space, I locked the door behind me, breathing heavily. The tapping had stopped. The silence was almost louder than the storm. That was when I felt it again. The unmistakable sense of being watched. It was coming from my window, where the tapping first started. Courageously, I walked over and pulled the curtain aside. My breath hitched in my throat.
There, staring back at me, was the face of a child, pale and glistening, illuminated by flashes of lightning. My heart seized. Everything felt surreal. I wasn't just losing my mind. Something dangerous was at play. Then, everything went dark. I blinked, trying to make sense of the sudden darkness. A feeling of cold dread spread through me as I groped for the wall, my eyes struggling to adjust. Where had the child gone? I could still feel the weight of that gaze lingering in the air. "Hello," I whispered, my voice small and shaky. There was no reply, just the relentless roar of the storm outside. Lightning flashed again, illuminating the room for a split second, and I felt a chill crawl down my spine. "Stop it," I muttered to myself. I needed to stay calm. I shuffled backwards, heart pounding. The couch was just behind me.
Maybe if I could sit down, I could think. Then a low creaking sound pulled my attention back to the window. I turned just in time to see the curtain flutter as though someone had pushed it aside. My mind raced. No way was I imagining this. I took a cautious step forward toward the window. The rain pounded furiously, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. I reached for the curtain, ready to pull it aside once more, but then I froze. What if it was the child again, or worse? I glanced at the toy soldier still in my pocket, the faded message flashing in my mind like the lightning outside. Help me. I couldn't ignore it. I had to find out what was happening. Gathering my courage, I grabbed the lamp on the table, a flimsy form of defense. The light flickered as I turned it on, casting long shadows across the room. Outside, another wave of thunder echoed. "Who's there?" I called, my voice stronger this time. There was silence. The rain tapped steadily against the window, but the tapping I heard earlier was gone. I felt oddly alone. Just then, the floorboards creaked behind me. I whirled around, nearly dropping the lamp. The sound had come from the hallway again. My heart raced. Was someone in my apartment? The thoughts of the child's face returned, and that inexplicable connection tugged at me. As I moved cautiously towards the hall, the creaking sound came again, this time followed by a faint voice. "Help, please." I froze. Was I really hearing that? I strained to listen, clutching the lamp tightly. "Help," I echoed, not even sure if I wanted a response. "Please." The plea was stronger, more defined, just ahead. I glanced back at the door, then back to the darkness of the hall. "Who are you?" I demanded, trying to sound more composed than I felt. "I'm scared." The tiny voice came again, filled with genuine fear. I made my decision. I knew I had to follow the sound. I stepped carefully down the hallway, feeling the weight of the toy soldier in my pocket, like an omen. That's when I saw it. A shadow darted through the doorway at the end of the hall. My stomach twisted. I had to know what was waiting in the dark. As I approached the doorway, something else moved, covering the light. A figure was there, small and shrouded. I couldn't see its face, but I could feel it watching me. And then, just like that, the power went out completely. I stood in absolute darkness, the air thick with silence that seemed to swallow every sound. My heart raced, and as I held the lamp aloft, I realized its feeble light was now useless. The storm raged outside, drowning out my thoughts with its relentless fury. I felt around for something solid, a wall, a piece of furniture, anything to ground me. My hands brushed against the frame of the doorway, and I leaned against it, trying to steady my breathing. That voice was still echoing in my mind, but doubt clawed at me. Was I really hearing a child, or was this all in my head?
Suddenly, a soft patter broke through the storm. I leaned closer, straining to catch the sound again. It came from the hallway, muffled but distinct. A child's footsteps. My stomach knotted in fear. I could either turn back, retreat to safety, or step forward and confront whatever was happening. "Hello?" I called again, this time louder, desperation creeping into my voice. "If you're there, please say something." Silence met my call, but that soft sound continued. It was growing closer. "Please," I whispered this time, almost pleading. "I want to help you." But what if I shouldn't? What if help was the last thing this child wanted? As those thoughts crashed through my mind, I could almost hear the rain laughing at my uncertainty. Steeling myself, I shuffled into the hallway, where the darkness felt heavier. I took one step, then another, letting my instincts guide me. The little noises were clearer now, a rustling, as if something else was moving just out of reach.
Each step felt like a declaration of my own bravery, yet I was terrified. Lightning illuminated the hallway again, but this time it revealed a door slightly ajar at the end, shadows flickering inside. A chill ran through me. That door shouldn't be open. I distinctly remembered closing it earlier. "Is someone in there?" I called out, forcing the words past my lips. The storm thundered in response, but the footsteps had shifted. They paused at the door, and then I heard a soft scrape against the floor. I moved closer, driven by a mix of dread and curiosity. My fingers brushed the door handle, and I hesitated. What was on the other side? Would it help me understand what was happening? Just as I was about to pull the door wide open, another crack of thunder erupted, louder than the last. I jumped back instinctively, half expecting something to rush at me. Instead, the silence returned, as if the world were holding its breath. "Please," the voice came again, softer now. "Don't go." I felt the blood drain from my face. My mind screamed at me to run, but my feet remained rooted. I had to know. Gathering every ounce of courage, I twisted the handle and flung the door open. The moment I did, the lights flickered back on, washing the hallway in stark brightness. My heart lurched as I saw what was waiting on the other side. A tiny figure, outlined by the sudden glare, pale and shaking. The sight both terrified and captivated me. "Don't leave me," it said, and my chest tightened as the truth hit me. I wasn't just facing the child. I was staring into the depths of a fear I couldn't explain. What had I gotten myself into? The figure took a shaky step forward, its wide eyes pleading. I could barely make out its features, a small face framed by tangled hair, lips quivering. I felt an instinctual urge to comfort the child, but uncertainty held me back. "Who are you?" I managed to stammer, my voice trembling slightly.
It felt silly asking a child their name when we both knew it was me who needed to understand. "Help me," the child replied, each word like a whisper carried on a breeze, even though I was sure the wind outside was stealing the sound. In that moment, the storm seemed to roar back into focus, drowning out my thoughts. The child stared at me, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and hope. I took a cautious step forward, and just then, another flash of lightning illuminated the room. I caught a glimpse of something behind the child, a shadow, dark and flickering against the wall. I froze. My heart began to pound again, heavy and insistent. Was there someone else here? Or was it just my mind, playing tricks in the light and dark? "Please," the child repeated, a note of urgency creeping into its voice. I shook my head as if to clear it. This wasn't the time to doubt. "What do you need help with?" I asked, hoping my voice sounded steadier than I felt. "It's coming," the child cried, glancing over its shoulder. "You have to help me before it takes me." Panic surged through me. The gravity of the moment weighed down on me like the storm outside. What's coming?" I asked, feeling foolish for expecting an answer that would make sense. But silence fell again, thick and suffocating. The child backed away, glancing nervously toward the hallway behind it. "You have to believe me." Before I could respond, the lights flickered again, this time more violently. I felt the air grow colder, a sudden rush like the wind gusting through the open door, and the shadows seemed to stretch, dark fingers creeping towards us. "Get back!" I shouted instinctively, waving my arms. The child's eyes widened further, and I realized I was just as lost as I had been before. Then, without warning, the darkness surged. A strange noise filled the air, a low rumble, like something shifting just out of sight. I felt the ground tremble beneath me. Thunder exploded once more, overpowering every rational thought in my head. Suddenly, the front door slammed shut with a deafening bang, vibrating through the house. I whipped around, heart racing, thoughts spiraling. "Stay close," I said, uncertain of how to keep us safe, unsure of what was safety anymore. "Are you scared?" the child asked, its voice unnaturally calm in contrast to my racing pulse. I wanted to say no, to assure this fragile thing that everything would be all right, but my voice failed me. Just then, I saw it again, the shadow darting up the hallway. This time it was larger, more defined. My breath caught in my throat. "Look," I pointed, but before the child could respond, the lights abandoned us again, plunging back into darkness. The cold air rushed around, and I felt a grip tighten around my wrist. I swung my arm in panic, but no one was there. My heart thundered in my chest, louder than the storm outside. Then everything went black. I blinked hard against the darkness. No light, no sound. just the pounding of my heart echoing in my ears. I was disoriented. The weight of the silence pressed heavily upon me. My hands instinctively reached out in front of me, searching in vain for anything solid, a wall, a piece of furniture, anything to ground me in this suffocating void. "Stay close," I whispered, although I wasn't even sure if the child was still there. The last flicker of lightning had shared only fragmented images with me, wide, frightened eyes and tangled hair. But where did the child go? Taking a cautious step forward, I felt the cold floor beneath my feet as I moved deeper into the pitch black. My hand brushed against the wall, and I followed it, hoping it would lead me to safety, or at least to the child. Then, out of the darkness, I heard a whimper. My blood ran cold. "Is that you?" I called, voice unsteady. My heart raced down the path of dread. "Please don't leave me." The child's voice trembled from somewhere away to my left. I turned, desperation clawing at my throat, and stumbled in the direction of the sound. Suddenly, another crack of thunder lit up the room. In that brief flash, I spotted the child, hunched against the wall, looking more terrified than ever. Relief swept over me, but just as quickly, I felt panic's grip tighten again. "We have to go," I insisted, but the child shook its head. "It's right behind us." It pointed toward the hallway, voice rising in desperation. I turned, and for a fleeting moment I thought I saw it, a twisted shape silhouetted against the faint outline of the doorway. My eyes strained to confirm it. Shadows were dancing, but I couldn't discern any human form. "What is it?" I yelled, terror spilling out. "I don't know," the child whimpered. It wants me." Before I could ask more, the next thunderstrike boomed louder, and I felt something brush past me, colder than the storm itself. My breath hitched. I turned my head sharply. Something glided through the air, a blackness that stirred with a life of its own, something that didn't belong. "Run!" I screamed as I wrapped my arm around the child, yanking it toward the front door. But as we moved, the shadows seemed to pounce, clawing at my ankles like tendrils trying to pull us back. I reached for the doorknob, desperation fueling my strength, but it wouldn't budge. The door was locked, held firmly shut against whatever lurked behind us. The child whimpered again, clinging tighter to my side. "Look!" it gasped, pointed toward the opposite wall. An outline shimmered as if the darkness was bleeding into light. I squinted, feeling my pulse race. "There's a way out!" It was a window. My heart raced with new hope. Without hesitation, I rushed to it, dragging the child along. The frame was rotting, crumbling wood that resisted my push. Then I heard it, a low, guttural groan from the shadows behind us, closer this time. I glanced back, panic surging as I could feel the very air shift. The shadows grew denser, almost solid, and I could see a faint shimmer of eyes within them. "Hurry!" My hands worked frantically, finally managing to yank the window open. A rush of cold air poured in, slicing across my skin. I turned back to the child. "Out first!" But the words barely left my lips when something snatched at my leg, forcing me down. I grunted and turned to fight it off, but I was met with nothing but darkness. That was when I heard the child scream. "No!" I shouted, forcing my way back. But right as I bent down, the ground beneath my feet trembled. And just like that, the window shattered, sending glass and light scattering everywhere. I found myself face to face with the shadow, and in that moment, I knew we weren't alone anymore. The shadows seemed to expand, swallowing the light from the shattered window. I froze, my breath hitching in my throat. The child's scream echoed in my ears, filling the air with a fearful urgency that I couldn't shake. "Where are you?" I shouted, forcing myself to move, despite my instincts screaming at me to flee. I groped blindly around, my heart racing as I tried to keep my focus on the small figure I knew was there. Any moment the shadow could engulf me too. Suddenly, I felt a small hand grasp my wrist. Relief flooded through me, but it was quickly knocked away by another wave of dread. "We have to go," I insisted, yanking my arm free. "Where's the door?" "I don't know," the child's voice cracked. "It's everywhere." The ground shook again, stronger this time, and I stumbled. I could barely keep my balance in the chaos, and the air felt thick, as if it were alive with dread. A soft whisper flowed through the darkness, chilling me to the bone, saying things I could not understand. I couldn't tell if it lingered in my mind or if it was real, but something in my gut told me it was not good. "We have to find a way out." I turned back toward the window, hoping to see at least a glimmer from the outside. As I struggled to stay upright, I felt the shadows brush past me like icy fingers. The whispers grew louder, wrapping around me like a thick fog. Then I did something I never thought I'd do.
I dropped to my knees, searching the floor for anything familiar. My hands grazed against the cold wood, and I pushed through the clutter, hoping for something solid. My fingers grazed a small object, a fragment of glass, sharp and jagged. "Over here!" I shouted, although I could barely hear my own voice over the howling wind rushing through the shattered window. The child found me, scrambling closer. "What are you doing?" Panic laced each word. "I'm fighting back," I gritted my teeth, my fingers closing around the shard. "If it comes near us, I'll get it." The growls from the shadows seemed to grow louder, vibrating through the space around us. I glanced up, heart racing, and saw the silhouette towering just beyond the shattered window.
The eyes shimmered with malice, hungry and wide, reflecting a twisted longing. "Look out!" the child shouted, shoving me back just as the darkness lunged forward, a mass of writhing shadows eager to consume. I stumbled, falling backward, the glass shard slipping from my grasp as I watched in horror. The child acted faster, darting to help me up, and together we scrambled away. The whispers turned into an angry roar. "Run!" I yelled, propelling us both toward the hallway. The darkness chased after us, shrieking, its form contorting and shifting. We had to get away, anywhere but here. We sprinted down the corridor, desperately searching for another exit, but I could feel the shadows coming for us, faster now. In that moment of sheer terror, a new realization struck me. "Where is the door?" the child cried, desperate, pulling me back with a trembling hand. And that's when I saw it. A faint light flickering at the end of the hallway, illuminating an old door that I thought had been lost to time. Hope surged through me, desperate and wild. But just as I stepped closer, a shadow leapt from the wall and wrapped around my ankle, dragging me down. "No!" I screamed as I clawed at the floor, feeling the cold tendrils closing around my leg and wrenching me backward. The door loomed just out of reach, the light growing dim. Something was in the way, and I knew it wasn't done with us yet. The shadow tightened its grip on my ankle, pulling me further into the abyss of darkness. I kicked and flailed, my heart racing as panic surged through me. The floor felt slick, almost alive, as the tendrils dragged me closer to whatever hungered beyond. "Help me!" I cried out, my voice hoarse and desperate. But the child was too scared, stumbling back from the encroaching darkness, eyes wide with terror. I could see the fear mirror my own, and it drove me to fight harder. "Grab my hand!" I shouted, reaching out as the cold darkness coiled tighter. At that moment, the child hesitated, and my heart sank. I was losing my strength, but I refused to let the shadows win. Finally, the child lunged forward, grabbing my outstretched hand with a fierce grip. Together, we pulled against the shadow, the powerful force battling us with every ounce of strength it had. But it was relentless, a wave of darkness crashing over us. "I can't hold on," the child wailed, eyes darting to the door that flickered like a dying star. Just then, I caught a glimpse of something moving in the shadows behind us. A figure? I tilted my head, squinting through the growing dark. The whispers shifted, taking on a new tone, a deeper rumble that sent a chill slicing through me. "Let go!" I yelled as my instincts took over. I shoved the child backward, breaking free of that icy grip. I could only hope the child could find safety away from the growing chaos. Then I turned to face the shadow directly. "You want me? Come and get me," I shouted, summoning a strength I didn't know I had. The air thickened, charged with raw energy, and the darkness swirled around, almost responding to my challenge. In that split second, a blinding flash of light erupted from the flickering door. It felt like a beacon slicing through the shadow's malice. I stumbled toward it, not looking back. I knew I had to reach that door. The shadows shrieked, furious and frantic, their tendrils snapping angrily at my heels. "Please!" I screamed, throwing myself forward with every ounce of strength I had left. The door was right in front of me, the light solid now. I reached out, stalling only for a moment to look over my shoulder. I saw the figure struggling against the shadows, a desperate attempt to reach me. My breath caught in my throat. "Wait!" I called out, but I could see the darkness swallowing the child up, pulling them further into its void. I turned back to the door, clutching my fists. I had to choose.
With one final push, I threw myself through the doorframe, feeling the heat of that brilliant light consume me. I landed on the other side with a hard thud, my breath knocked out of me. When I opened my eyes, the shadows fell silent behind me, but there was no sign of the child. I scrambled to my feet, panic flooding my veins as I spun around. The door stood alone, its light flickering once more, but the screams had ceased. "Kid!" I shouted, terror clawing at my throat. "Where are you?" But the hallway held its breath, silent and oppressive. I shivered, feeling the echoes of that whisper still slithering through my thoughts. The door wasn't just an exit. It felt like a trap. That's when I noticed it, a glimmer at the foot of the door, a small familiar object peeking through the shadows. My heart sank as I recognized what it was. I reached down, fingers trembling, and pulled it free. It was the glass shard I had discarded. I gripped it tighter. Something was wrong, and I had only just stepped into a different kind of nightmare. I stood in the dim hallway, clutching the shard of glass like a lifeline. A mix of dread and confusion twisted in my gut. What had just happened? Had I really made it out? And what about the child? The silence felt heavy around me, the kind that chokes you. I stepped away from the door, uncertainty clawing at my mind. I looked down the hallway, noticing the walls were marked with strange symbols. They pulsed softly like they were breathing, but I had no idea what they meant. Then I heard it, a faint whispering coming from deeper inside the hallway. I strained to listen, my heart thudding against my chest. It sounded like a voice calling my name, but it was too low, too distorted to understand. "Hello?" I called out, the sound echoing back at me. "Is anyone there?" The whispers grew louder, swirling around me. It felt like they were coming from everywhere. I took a cautious step forward, drawn by an instinct I didn't understand.
The light from the door behind me flickered dimly, a reminder of the chaos I had just escaped. I moved slowly, trying to make sense of everything. The symbols on the wall seemed to glow brighter as I approached, illuminating the path ahead. The more I stepped toward the murmur, the clearer the voice became. Then, a sudden gust of wind blew through the hallway. It carried a bitter chill that froze me in place. The whispers shifted into what sounded like laughter, dark and mocking. I stumbled back, instinctively raising the shard in front of me like a weapon. "What do you want from me?" I shouted. "Show yourself!" The laughter faded, replaced by a dull thud, as if something heavy had dropped behind me. I whipped around to see a shadow flicker at the edge of the door. My breath hitched. The darkness pooled there, forming a shape that felt too familiar. "Is it you?" I asked, hope battling against fear. But as it moved forward, I realized it wasn't the child. The figure wasn't small or innocent. It loomed over me, an inky silhouette with no features, just an emptiness that consumed everything around it. I gripped the shard tighter, feeling its cold surface dig into my palm. My pulse quickened, a surge of fight or flight coursing through me. I stepped back cautiously, my instincts telling me to run, but my feet felt glued to the floor. With every step it took, the air felt heavier. I could almost taste the despair that lingered in the shadows. I wasn't just witnessing something terrible, I was being pulled into it, like some tragic magnetism. Then, everything went dark. The world around me shifted, a void sucking away the light. I squeezed my eyes shut, but it didn't shield me from the overwhelming presence pressing down. When the darkness receded, I found myself in a different place. The hallway was gone. The air smelled of rain and earth, heavy and familiar. I stood in a room that looked like my childhood home, memories flooding back, but it felt wrong. The walls were covered in handwritten notes, frantically crisscrossed, with words I couldn't decipher. And then, in the center of the room, something shifted again. My heart sank as I recognized an outline on the floor, a small, crumbled figure. I rushed forward, dread bubbling inside me like boiling water. I didn't know what I would find, but I had to know. As I drew closer, chills raced down my spine. That familiar voice echoed again in my mind, now loud and clear. "Help me." And then, just like that, the room went quiet. My breaths quickened as I stood over the small figure, unable to process the scene before me. It was a child, curled up and trembling, just like the one I had seen before, but something was off. The familiar energy of fear enveloped us both, and I didn't know if it was mine or the child. "Are you okay?" I breathed, my voice trembling as I crouched down, heart racing. The figure stirred, but didn't look up. Instead, it rocked gently back and forth, its hands clutching the tattered fabric of its clothes. "Help me," it whispered again, the same haunted plea that sent chills rippling through me, deep echoing within my soul. Why was I here? I didn't understand. Hadn't I escaped? I reached out tentatively, drawn by an urge to comfort the child, an instinct innate to my being. But as my hand brushed against its shoulder, a surge of coldness shot through me. The child's eyes snapped open, wide and glistening with fear, and I pulled back instinctively. "Where am I?" I demanded, the question more layered than I first intended. The shadows flickered at the edges of the room, dark shapes looming, echoing the tension in the air. "It follows me. It always follows," the child murmured, its gaze shifting to the corner of the room where an unsettling darkness still lingered. The unease swirled within me, threatening to suffocate. "Who? What is it?" I pressed, though I knew the child was trapped in this fear. My heart raced, time was slipping through my fingers. "I don't know," the child whispered, voice trembling, "but it takes those who don't listen, those who try to help." A chill now raced through my veins. That realization crashed over me. Maybe escaping wasn't enough. Maybe helping opened a door to something deeper, something darker. Just then, the shadows coalesced, thrumming with a palpable energy that threatened to spill over. The child shuddered at my feet, and I felt that twinge of helplessness rising again. My thoughts raced, each question crumbling into the next. What if I had made a mistake instead of saving? "Please," the child gasped, "we need to go before it comes." Instinct told me to pull the child closer, but I hesitated. In so many ways I had failed to protect someone, and could I expose them to more danger? The memory of their frightened eyes struck me as my own began to swell with tears. And just then, the walls trembled, and shadows stretched in unnatural lengths. I grabbed the glass shard still clutched in my hand, an emblem of hope and desperation, trying to ground my thoughts. "Hold on!" I shouted, thrusting the shard out toward the encroaching darkness, an act of defiance. "Leave us alone!" The air crackled, and in response, the shadow shrieked. It morphed and clawed at the very fabric of this reality. My heart raced. Creating distance between myself and the child felt impossible, like a betrayal to a bond I didn't fully comprehend. Light flickered. "I'm not leaving you," I declared, nearly choking on the resolute cry, knowing it was for both of us. The assertion brought a rush of warmth through me, but it was quickly undermined by the bone-deep fear lapping ever closer. The shadows writhed, poised to consume everything, and just like that, the light surged once more, forcing me back into the moment. I had to remember, I made it this far. "Come on," I muttered, reaching for the child once again. "We can escape together. We don't have to hide." But as I tried to grasp the figure, it flickered like a mirage before slipping just out of reach. "Help me," the child echoed, voice fracturing into tiny splinters of fear as the shadows whispered louder, drowning out our courage. The ground shook, hollow laughter bubbling from the darkness. I grabbed hold of the jagged glass again, the grasp serving as my anchor to sanity. My heart raced, and instinct sparked a desperate fire in my chest. I had fought too hard. I would not succumb to the weight of despair. "Stay with me," I shouted, tightening my grip around the shard. Light poured forth from the depths of my soul, feeding into the jagged piece of broken glass. The shadows flinched, recoiling at the warmth of light breaking through their cold. But as I lunged forward, reaching out again, the darkness blurred, and the room shifted around me. I held on tight to the glimmer of hope, praying the fire in me would be enough. Yet each step felt like wading through a thick fog, time moving slower as reality warped. "Please," the child pleaded again, and my resolve solidified. I needed to figure this out. I needed a way forward. With a determination rooted in the core of my being, I shrieked, "This isn't over!" The shadows howled, and for the first time I could almost see their form, a mass twisted by rage and desperation. It stretched toward me, seeming to pull strength from the darkness itself. But I didn't turn away, not this time. I wielded my shard like a beacon of light, merging our energy into a fierce wave against this advancing void. "I won't let you take us." Bolts of light erupted from the glass. It resonated with echoes of forgotten battles and ancient fears. The darkness screamed, lessened, and began to unravel at the seams, revealing glimpses of another world just beyond.
Before I could sense it, the void cracked open, a bright light spilling forth, washing over everything like a cleansing tide. Then, just as quickly as it had begun, the shadows dissolved into nothingness, leaving only silence echoing in their wake. I fell to my knees, resisting the urge to collapse altogether. But as the light flickered and my vision swam, the realization struck me hard. Where was the child? I forced myself to stand, searching desperately for a sign, but there was nothing, just an empty expanse where we had fought to remain. The echoes of laughter faded, leaving behind that haunting loneliness once more. The silence felt suffocating, and questions swelled inside me like a storm threatening to unload its fury. I staggered back toward the point of light, the doorway now pulsating softly. Heartbreak washed over me. I didn't know what I'd encountered, or if I had truly helped. Yet one thing lingered in the air, refusing to fully dissipate. An unanswered question sat heavy on my heart. Was it all merely the shadows, or was there something more to this unfathomable night?
With one last look back, I stepped through the door, breathing in the thick air from outside, a taste laden with ambivalence, where every raindrop reminded me of the courage to face the unknown.